that's
Awesome.
fine too. Right, that's entertainment.
So we're all set up, and we've been having everyone start just by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your role here at the museum.
My name is Carl Goodman. I'm the executive director of the Museum of the Moving Image. Prior to that, I was the museum's curator of digital media, and so I come into this position with a tremendous amount of interest in technology and entertainment.
So I think just to jump right into it, which consumer behaviors do you feel are having the biggest impact on the entertainment industry generally?
Today, the consumer behaviors with the greatest impact have to do, I'd say, with first of all, control. Media audiences, I hate to call them consumers these days because they are producers as well. They want to know that they have control over their entertainment content, to be able to access and view and talk about their stuff from any device, from any location that is available to them. They can't be played like I think the entertainment industry can play audiences or had in the past. They can't be manipulated as much. I've found that young people are very much aware of when they're being imprisoned in a walled garden of content, and they don't like it. And they actually talk about it. They may not have the words to articulate it, but they much prefer the idea of a suite or a stack of individual tools and software that allows them to do different things. They can pick and choose among them. And so the important thing is, I refer to it as open source entertainment, that the data that they generate and the content that they view and experience can be accessed across multiple platforms. So what I found is that, for instance, Facebook, maybe it's just the moment I'm seeing a bit of an exodus. Not the old people who are joining. My 99-year-old grandmother became a member a little while ago and loves it. But the young people who feel almost trapped inside of the walled garden of something like Facebook. In the same way, I think that the entertainment delivery companies may be doing too much to try to create that walled garden. And young people especially know when the barrier placed in front of them that prevents them from doing something with the entertainment that they have is an artificial one placed by the company in order to maintain audience or market share. And so I hope that openness will prevail because there are opportunities for many, many companies to profit from the behavior that people are exhibiting today.
Excellent. And so I would have said this probably to start, but there's points where I might ask you to go back and just redefine a term, which you referred to. So if you were to wrap up and talk about open source entertainment in just a quick clip, how do you define that in your eyes?
Well, open source entertainment is the idea that the ecology of devices and software and content that is available to young people, or especially young people, be able to be experienced again across what might be thought of as competing devices and delivery for mechanisms and so on. And also that which they create within each of these environments be transferable to other ones. A kind of integration among the parts where each of the parts might be owned by separate companies, but there's a value to allowing consumers to share. And what happens is if a company holds to creating or having the artificial barriers that prevent people from doing this, then someone will come in and disrupt that and offer something that people want that others aren't providing.
That's excellent. And the artificial barriers you see are the constraints which are really of no interest to the younger, especially the younger consumer, and they're interested in disrupting that, breaking that, and finding a way to consume their content when and where they want it. Is that something you're noticing?
Some of the barriers that are there oftentimes have to be there, let's say, for legal reasons. So it's not evil people trying to constrain, put consumers in straitjackets. So for instance, to have to log in to my cable provider's account in order to experience subscription content that I'm already paying for outside of my home is an example of something that I hear people saying, why can't I do this? The technology allows me to do it. The issue often has to do with the agreements that the carriers have with the channels and so on. But people don't understand that. They don't understand why suddenly they can't watch CBS, and they don't care. They are going to try to find some other way to do it. Again, what I found, given the Museum of the Moving Image's long view of these developments, the seeds of what's happening today were actually planted, 50 years ago, with the development of the microprocessor and the ability to fling moving image media as bits across networks. And I think to see oneself as part of an evolution that's actually taking a long time to occur versus some sharp paradigm shift which you experience in the moment is beneficial to the industry. Perhaps some people wonder what the future of the entertainment industry is, and even where am I or my company positioned within that. The entertainment industry is going to be fine, but you might not be part of the entertainment industry. So the Museum of the Moving Image focuses on the evolution of these wonderful consumer behaviors and technologies without having to worry about who's going to win the battle. I think it's very clear where we're going, but what's unclear is who's going to be there.
Excellent. Thank you. And so, what do you see as the biggest technologies and platforms changing the way that people consume content and their entertainment, I suppose?
Yeah, see, the answer to the question of it's a boring answer, right? I mean, it's again, the seeds were planted long ago. One is, of course, Internet Protocol, and moving everything over from moving all content over to open and distributed networks from these exclusive modes of delivery. Even film is now delivered digitally on a hard drive. The difference is that you have to have an encryption key to show digital cinema in a theater. What's great about movie theaters is the barriers to entry of a consumer to do what movie theaters do are quite high. 300 seats and $2 million in investment. When it comes to TV, the barriers to entry are quite low. And so what you're seeing is a tremendous explosion of what they used to call user-generated content. I call it content. That is being created by, again, what used to be thought of as amateurs, but I see them as content creators. The good news is there is no substitute for beautifully written, beautifully shot, beautifully edited, resonant moving image media. A show like, we'll use the example of Breaking Bad, which has millions and millions of viewers. It's at its scale, it's even far richer and much better put together than most movies. But look at all of the consumer audience interaction and discussion around the show. They're talking about it. They're relating themselves to it. They're re-editing it to make things that might be humorous or even analytical related to the show. The important thing for the creators is, that is the creators of the content, is as it always was, to create something great. I don't think you have to worry about creating native transmedia properties. The transmedia part comes from the audience. I feel that professionals can focus on creating, again, important and well-made moving image media, and then the interactive part will evolve organically around it.
So going to say, it sounds like the interactions around a show will be organic. And where would you see those interactions taking place? Where could they evolve to? I mean, it doesn't seem like a chat room forum is really the right venue. Maybe in some instances it is, but I'm wondering what...
Well, again, I'm a traditionalist. I don't feel that content, industry content creators need to think about building hooks into their content so that people can interact with it or determine what happens next. These are gimmicks that have been experimented with for 50 years. Now, it's always the case that just because something's worked in the past won't mean it won't work now, or the reverse. You know, the perennial question is, what's happening now like what happened before, or is it different? The answer is usually both. But again, being somewhat of a traditionalist, I think the key is to create great content in whatever format the creative people want to make it in, and the conversation will evolve organically. And then companies can react to what they're seeing out there and then create the hooks that allow those kinds of interactions to be amplified exponentially.
I was going to say, there's in my mind, there might be an opportunity to think about adding some, having the writers of Breaking Bad contribute over real time on Twitter and show or something like that, because then maybe it's something that you think the audience definitely will appreciate, but you feel like you're contributing to the conversation in some way. So you think are there interesting opportunities to leverage these new tools that are out there?
There are interesting opportunities to have content creators step back or step forward as individuals because of the fascination that audiences have now with the people behind the scenes. And I don't see having a writer comment on Twitter that much different from having an actor on Jay Leno. These are all part of a promotional and marketing strategy. Just because there are these new ways for makers to be in touch with their audiences doesn't mean the old ways are dead. In fact, being on Jay Leno is an extremely efficient way to promote the show. And having writers tweet with to audiences might not be where the writers want to be, because they're spending 22 hours a day writing the damn show. So I'm saying that you got to listen to your audience. You put something great out there and see how people react to it, what they do with it, and then make that into a dialectic, a conversation between maker and audience, rather than to determine a priori exactly how you want the public to interact with your product.
Excellent, thank you. What do you see as the essential components of the device ecosystem, and how we'll engage with our content in our home, be it at a venue, etc.? What are the technological components which will make that up? Multiple screens and the like. And we can fascinate.
Right. Well, now this question of the device ecology is interesting. I feel that my personal experience, informed by my professional perspective, is best to refer to at this point. I hate switching between my cable box and my Roku, right? Oh, that content's here or that content's there. My kids don't understand why there are two different remotes, and have to go to, in certain cases, the STB, I guess they call it, versus the digital video player. The content from one is coming from the internet, the content from the other is coming from a closed system. And so it is logical to assume that these two are going to come together as one, because consumers will demand it, and technology perhaps, and the idea efficiencies demand it. So I see all content coming through IP via the internet, sent into a single device that might be embedded into the viewing device itself, or might not be. One thing I can do with my Apple TV is I can travel with it. I can't travel with my 55-inch Samsung. So there will be a place in this ecology for both outboard devices, and then outboard devices to be attached to screens, and then screens that have that functionality built into it. Finally, again, there are opportunities to encourage audiences to curate the content that they experience on their screen, rather than be handed a suite of hundreds and hundreds of channels, only 5% of which they use. So I would love to see on these cable systems the ability not only to create your own profile of channels tied to you as a viewer, knowing that your sister might have some other set, and then to have the system be able, and this is a little Orwellian, so you have to be careful, to know what it is you're watching and potentially recommend other content that you might like, or to merge even metadata is really important in this world. So if the way in which all of this content that the companies, cable companies, others are offering can be cataloged based on its essential features. So not only are things being recommended based on what something's viewing, but things are being recommended based on the way the experts describe each of these pieces. I mean, in a way, I guess I'm talking about a Pandora for video. It is inevitable. Someone will do it. TV as a lean-back experience has less to do with button pushing, and so I think there is an opening there for ways to combine content that's otherwise accessible on these artificial constructs they call channels into personalized channels that can grow and change based on people's viewing habits.
I would absolutely think those would aid, the systems you described would aid in discovery as well.
Yeah, there are two ways to discover, I find. One is to search for something, and the other is to have something recommended to you. And the sweet spot, I think, combines these two modes. They're not exclusive to one another. And there's tremendous possibility. The companies that are delivering this content to audiences have a tremendous amount of power to engage in these conversations with their audiences so that they can personalize their viewing experience. And that's because while this channel or that channel or that channel know about their own content but not others and don't care about the others, the delivery system, the people who deliver the content, they're looking at the gestalt of the experience of the audience, the whole experience. And again, legal issues and agreements aside, I don't think that audiences should have to, again, abide by these artificial constructs that are called channels. And just as Pandora revolutionized radio, or other, certainly Spotify revolutionized music discovery, music access. The idea of different types of content being brought to you by ABC or NBC or AMC or et cetera, isn't relevant to the audience, and in an ideal world wouldn't be relevant to the cable provider either.
Absolutely. Could you see something could you see something where it's a combination of the data, using data to help you discover, and then also the word of mouth, more traditional? Is there a system there which would be effective?
Yep. Okay, let's see. In this world today, context is a kind of content, and I think it's important to step back and look at the ways in which people are accessing and sharing and talking about media, because that is media too. And so, whereas I think today people think of social media as something apart from mass media, bringing the two together is very, very powerful. You're talking about a social media layer on top of traditional media, and the ability to have things recommended to you should always depend, perhaps, it can be done now, perhaps later, on what it is that people you know, or people who you've identified as having similar tastes to yours have. This works in both ways. One way, again, is that someone you know and like will recommend or be watching something, Spotify does this very well, and you just click and there you are. You can even in real time experience it together at that point, or not. Because of asynchronous viewing, Netflix does this. I'm pointing there because Netflix is shooting Orange is the New Black across the street. They just do a data dump of the entire season at once. Lost is that experience of watching things together. What if the system brought that experience back and allowed people to match up and say, we're going to watch this episode together so that we can talk about it afterward? And because in a way the content provider isn't requiring that. So that's the ability, again, to ascribe to experience content based on what your friends or people you know or people whose taste you agree with will be very important. The reverse is that mass media can become a platform for introducing people to one another who don't know each other, right? So as much as social media can aid and abet the consumption of mass media can encourage the viewer to expand their circle of friends based on learning that they like the same things as you. So this happens again if you look at Instagram is a great example. I see people becoming friends with each other because of the music that they both like. So again, it goes both ways. One is social media as an umbrella over mass media, and the other is mass media as an umbrella over the kind of social interaction that allows people to expand their circle of friends.
Excellent.
That's a long-winded answer, but
no, that's excellent. Thank you very much. What do you see, and we touched on this earlier, but what do you see as the explosion of new channels and platforms, YouTube, Vine, Netflix? What impact will that have on content distribution?
Let's see, that's a good one. It's interesting that people talk about channels and platforms together. In a way, channels are becoming platforms, and we have a crisis when it comes to the terminology we use to describing what's happening today. The words don't quite match up. You can create a channel within YouTube. My kids think of YouTube as a channel, but they're channels within channels. We don't really have the words to describe exactly what's going on. There's room in this ecology for multiple ways of thinking about the relationship of content to channel to platform. And what is Netflix exactly? Is it equivalent to what the cable companies are doing, or is it a content creator, et cetera, et cetera? There's an uncertainty in the industry right now of what to call everything, and am I competing with you or am I working with you? Not quite sure. I talked to a cable executive recently who has a deal with Netflix for distributing their content, and the ability to access the back catalog of a show when the show is currently showing live on that channel allows hundreds of thousands of people or even millions to catch up on the show and therefore experience it today. It's really valuable. They're also getting some money every time someone accesses the show from their back catalog. But then Netflix goes up and creates something that competes with that show. Who are you? Are you my competitor? Are you my collaborator? There's that uncertainty. Are you my friend or are you my enemy? So it is, I think, the age of the frenemy in media. Will this ever shake out? I don't know. I think the dynamics of the ecology and networks allow people to have deals with those with whom they're also competing. In a way, I give you something, you give me something. In the old days of the entertainment industry, I sense a kind of aggression that it was more black and white, black hat, white hat, and the goal was to get the best deal, to win the deal, and get better terms than the person you're negotiating with. I think in this landscape there's room for everybody to win and work together, And the best kind of deal is, how do I get something out of it, and how do you get something out of it? So I think that's very important when considering whether YouTube or Google or Netflix or Amazon is a friend or an enemy. I think it's extremely important.
It's really interesting to think about the explosion of, say, a Netflix, and how it's been around for a while, but especially as it moves to tablets, mobile, etc., how that is being used to support a live, more traditional event, cable, Breaking Bad, final season or something like that, catching people up. These two platforms working together. Do you see this as something, well, that's just interesting in my mind, I suppose.
Right. A symbiotic relationship was able to be forged between a content company and Netflix that perhaps doesn't benefit the cable carrier, because they're able to, the consumer goes around the cable carrier to access the back catalog of that show. Whether there should be a deal in place so that the public can access every single show from that back catalog via the same platform that they access the new season. It is artificial for someone have to, in fact, a personal, this is an anecdote, I caught up with Breaking Bad, and then I went on to Netflix to watch the new season, and I realized, oh, I have to now go over to Time Warner Cable to catch up on the latest season. Turned out that the best way to have done that was to use my DVR to record all those shows, because I actually missed the first 4. So then I went on, I believe, to Amazon and purchased those 4 shows. So 3 completely different media platforms to experience one show. Now, should there be intelligence in the network that allows me to just to have a seamless media experience? Yes. I wish these companies would all find some way for the consumer to not have to know they have to jump from Netflix to Amazon to AMC, from one platform to another, in order to experience what is actually a continuity of content. And I think we can project ourselves into the future, assume that this having to platform jump to experience this continuity will not exist anymore because of market forces. Then where will you be as a company within that landscape? Will you be there at all? And to work toward that inevitability rather than fight it.
Perfect, thank you. We've touched on this a little bit, but what do you feel the role of amateur creators is in this new entertainment landscape?
I think when it comes to the role that amateur creators have in this landscape, it's important to understand that oftentimes the amateur creation that blows up has a very short shelf life. So yes, you may get 8 million views on YouTube for something, but a week later often people just forget about it. From the content perspective, it is still the entertainment companies that have the ability to create content that they can exploit over time that has a long shelf life. We showed Singin' in the Rain last week, and it was even better than it was when it came out. I don't think I will be watching Gangnam Style in 50 years. And so there's a value that's embedded within the professionally produced, let's say, high production value content that will always be there. So whoever is making that stuff, don't worry. What exists now is a tributary between the amateur content and the professional content. Just like in the music industry, the people in the professional content world need to be looking at what the amateurs are making, because that is a way to spot the next generation of talent. And again, the music industry, this is how they work. In another life, I would love to be an A&R executive at a music company if such a job position exists, because they're going to clubs and finding out what's good and what people, or essentially what they think of as good. Now, back then, the A&R person was looking at what they think of as good and what they think they could sell to the public. Today, these executives are looking at what the public is already responding to. They have to listen not just to the band, but also to the audience that the band has already developed. And then these media companies exist as a kind of catapult mechanism to find things that are already taking off and then amplify that effect by catapulting it through marketing and other forms of distribution to a mass audience. An interesting example of this in terms of listening to the customer is how the music industry is working with, believe it or not, the store Hot Topic. Hot Topic looks at what young people are responding to on iTunes and Spotify and what they're commenting on in Instagram, these bands, that unsigned bands no one's heard of, and they make t-shirts. They make t-shirts of these bands. They pay very little to license these bands' t-shirts because they're not very well known at that point, and the band is really jazzed that they, compared to Beyonce, let's say, of getting their t-shirt into Hot Topic. Hot Topic then collects all this data and reports to, or the music industry looks at the data to see what's selling. And then they use that data of clothing purchases to determine what bands they might invest in and sign. So there's an example of a media ecology that includes retail and clothing that where everybody wins, including the audience.
That's fascinating. What do you see? How does the entertainment industry adapt in that landscape? I mean, I guess let's move on.
Yeah, I'm saying there's data about consumer interest being generated everywhere, not just based on what they're looking at on this screen or that screen. It's everywhere, and part of it is because you have smart devices and smart systems, whether they're formerly known as cash registers or refrigerators. You have a device ecology that may not only be screen-based and is outside of the media industry that can help those in the media industry understand better what consumers and audiences are interested in, because again of the data that can now be generated in those other areas. And that's extremely powerful. So again, listen to your audience, and the places where you might do that listening could be very surprising. They could be, again, retail stores, they could be Starbucks, and in fact they are.
Does this affect the way that brands and agencies will think about advertising? And you mentioned marketing, but how about advertising?
Brands and agencies. See, there's a world. If all of them cease to exist tomorrow. No. Sorry. I think that from my understanding of it, which comes largely from watching Mad Men, so take it with a grain of salt, is there are sharp divisions among the different advertising channels that exist. Print, outdoor, web, TV, etc. Out of home, in home. It's very important that these companies think of what they're doing in a more integrated way. That the creatives who come through their system, bred through the system, have a purview that includes all of these channels, because there are opportunities in combining them. And again, I don't know if that's the case, but if the industry, hopefully the industry is not as ossified as that right now, but I bet you that the bigger ones are, because of the way that I interact with some of these agencies. So again, this idea that creative individuals working with brands and agencies have to look at the totality of the experience, and not just doing something for TV and doing something for print. The campaign has to include all of these things, and it has to engage the audience somehow in talking about the product or the brand. However, I've seen some really ham-handed efforts that again underestimate the intelligence of the audience. They know when they're being played. And one strategy that I think works very well across all platforms is to recognize, is to say outright, we're playing you, and to be somewhat irreverent about it. To recognize that the goal that these agencies and brands have is really to increase the profits for their clients. And somehow to embrace that and make the audience part of that would certainly work for people that I know who are bred in the age of irony.
Excellent. Thank you. Considering the mix of, and just a few more questions, considering the mix of channels that we have, what kind of entertainment experiences can we look forward to in the future? They'll be more personalized, I think we touch on. Would they be more immersive and then maybe interactive?
I think it's really fun to try to be innovative and cutting edge and break the fourth wall. We had an event in the museum as part of our independent games project that we did with Indiecade, where the audience controlled a, let's say, video game with 100 laser pointers pointed at the screen. It was a great fun, a really fun experience. It was generally experimental also, though. It was a demonstration of something looking for a real application that can be utilized. I hope that people from the advertising industry were there, because I saw it and I said, there are 100 ways to do something interesting with this. That said, the interaction, again, has to emerge organically from the audience. And I've seen such bad work and thinking when it comes to, how do you make a movie interactive? How do people have a role in determining what happens next? How do people play a game in concert with a movie? I apologize to Disney, but I was not impressed with the demonstration or the trailer I saw for the new interactive Little Mermaid, in which, and I urge everyone to see the video on YouTube, on a screen this wonderful classic unfolds, and suddenly all of these pre-K kids or elementary school kids raise their iPads in the air and begin playing games and communicating with each other while the movie plays. It's an interactive platform, in a way, forced upon a captive audience. And again, the goal is instead to have that interactivity really emerge organically. You can create new content to allow for that interaction, which is like what we had in our theater. Or you can add an interactive layer over something pre-existing. I'd say the latter is inadvisable unless that layer emerges from the audience. So I think that it's fun to think of all these creative approaches, but a really good creative in whatever format it needs to be, and opening things up through the network to allow people to add, to discuss, to share, to propagate through the network is important. What will people propagate for the network? Something they think is cool and interesting, like it always has been. Something well made, well paced, that people want to talk about, and that itself doesn't necessarily have to be interactive.
Can this mix of channels, can this also further storytelling in some way?
It's inevitable that people who've grown up with digital and the internet, and I think we're there. I lost track, but I believe we're now there, that people who are doing creative work in these various fields actually grew up with the internet. It is inevitable that they will think of things or develop content that takes advantage of these systems rather than to force it. Again, rather than feeling like you have to be on the cutting edge or else you lose your client, is different than, again, just thinking of digital interactive as a banal aspect of everyday existence. I told my daughter recently, as she was typing away, that I didn't have a computer when I was young to do my work on or to interact with people, and she said, "But Dad, how did you get your email?" And that again it shows what it is for people who today who are digital natives. People focus on digital natives as audience, but I think you have to look at digital natives as creators to look at what kind of storytelling we're going to see develop over time. Storytelling is always evolving, using whatever medium and whatever technologies are available to the day, from writing to certainly to radio, to television and film, of course, People with a gift for an interest in storytelling will always use what's around them to tell their stories. It's ingrained in the human psyche. It's in our DNA. You put a kid in a backyard with a stick, and he'll figure out a way to tell a story with that stick. So again, it is a natural human behavior that will always change, not necessarily evolve, but certainly change based on the technologies available for creation, distribution, and presentation.
I think that's great for us. Do you have any final thoughts? I mean, actually, I might ask you one last question, but any final thoughts?
No, I don't. Other than come visit the museum, because all of this stuff is much more fun in a physical context than watching a video.
That was excellent. Thank you so much.